Hello everybody and welcome to today's video. My name is Divinity Chained. I will be going through the character creation process for Pericle, the new tabletop RPG that is being kickstarted, something like that. I was fortunate enough to partake in one of their playtests, got to play around with the system a good bit, and I noticed in the Discord that there were a lot of questions on how to do different things, what different things mean, that kind of thing. So what I'm going to do is use some of my RPG experience, both with systems in general and with Pericle in particular, and kind of provide a walkthrough to help figure out what everything means before people start diving in. Granted, this video is being based off of what is currently available, so that could change as the system is finalized and things finally get released. If things do change a lot, I will make another video at that time, kind of explaining the new system and that kind of thing. So we're going to go ahead and dive right on in. What I have on the screen behind me is the PDF. I'm going to be switching back and forth between the PDF, and I have printed off a couple of character sheets that are there. They're as best I can anyway. Shift these around and I'll make sure to get a better view of them. I like actually having a hard copy of my character sheet, so that's why we're going to build on while we do this. I'm going to be going a little bit out of order from what the PDF says because I have a particular method that I like to use. Generally, when I start to make a character for any kind of RPG, I think about the role that he's going to play. We're actually going to make two characters today. We're going to make a very simple character to start with. Not diving into any of the crazy stuff, and then we will go ahead and do a more complicated character after. So for the first character, we're going to make, let's see what the following Pericle's process here. Their first suggestion is to determine your attributes. So with Pericle, as you can see on the screen, you have 5 points to split up amongst might, dex, and knowledge. So might is MT, dexterity is your DX, and then knowledge is KN. Might generally deals with grappling. It's kind of a combination of strength and constitution. Your might score helps determine your hit points. It helps determine what weapons you can carry. And it also plays a role in grappling. Dexterity gives you your, let's see how to explain this here. Yeah, basically agility and hand-eye coordination. Your dexterity determines how often you will hit with an attack, and it also determines your order of initiative. That's what I'm trying to think of. Knowledge is your level of knowledge, and it plays a role with determining what disciplines, skills, and spells you have access to based on what your number is. So you have 5 points to start off with for all of this. Like I said, we're going to start with a basic, your basic sword and shield kind of guy. So what we're going to want to do, because we are doing a sword and board, we're going to come over here to our character sheet. All right, we have our trusty character sheet here. And for me, and probably for you guys too, my general idea would be to put 2 in might, 2 in dex, and 1 in knowledge. That gives you the ability to have carry a decent weapon, give you a pretty decent chance to hit, and we won't get too heavy into the skills. So one of the things with Pericle is that your action dice, which is based off of your... Oh, almost lost the camera there. Your action dice is based off of your dex. So the action dice, the actual dice that you'll get in the game, has the numbers 1 through 4, a failure symbol, and then 5 success symbols, with one of them being a critical success. As long as the number you roll, if you roll a number, as long as the number you roll is lower than your action dice number, you'll succeed. Obviously, if you roll one of the success symbols, you'll succeed. And then if you roll the failure symbol, you automatically fail. So that's the first step, is determining your hero's abilities. And as you do more stuff, you'll figure out kind of your balance between might, dex, and knowledge. All right, so back to the handbook. We have their suggestion is to determine your starting XP. This is an okay time to do this. It's actually really easy. Every hero starts off with 20 XP, plus, as it says, 5 times your knowledge score. So for our current character, since we have a knowledge of 1, we're going to start off with 25 experience, which you put down here in the bottom corner, right there. This will be kind of a running tally. It'll change based off of what you earn, that kind of thing, and then we'll actually spend some of that experience points while we're building our character. All right. The next step on the handbook is to select your race, which I actually agree with, because this is going to show you, like, your race gives you different things. Humans start off with an extra 10 XP, which is good. Your forest elves, as it shows, you get an extra hex of movement, and you learn spells as if your knowledge is 1 point higher. We're not building a spellcaster this time, so we're not going to worry about forest elves. Your stone dwarf, when you're doing might checks, which is, trying to break something, trying to lift something, or I believe grapple. I'll probably have to double check on that. But you get an extra action die for that. You get 3 extra health, and then you heal 6 health during downtime instead of the 4. The Odrim are really good at learning new spells. Basically, it costs you 1 less to learn a new spell. And the Everkin are very good at grappling, or at least very good at avoiding grappling, and you get an extra action die on all of your skill checks, which that'll play more into the non-combat stuff. Since we're making a very basic kind of combat character, we're going to start off with an elf or a human, which is going to give us an extra 10 XP. So our total is actually going to be 35. I'm going to make note of the fact that we are human. All right. Next step for Pericle is to select weapons. I don't actually like this step here. So we're actually going to skip down past all of the weapon stuff. There's an easy way to do this. Apparently not that one. All right. So forgive me for fudging this a bit, but we're actually going to scroll down past all the weapons and the armor and the disciplines and the spells. We're going to skip all of that, and we're going to come down here to hit points, base AD, movement, and initiative. This, for me, I think should actually be next. At least just to kind of give you a base level of where you're at. So your max hit points for your character are going to be 10 plus your might score. So for our little sword and board guy that we have built here, Our might score is 2. So our max HP is going to go in this nifty little circle right here as a 12. Now, this can change once we start spending our XP, but we're not going to do that yet. All right? All right, so after your HP, you'll come down here. Your base action die, at its very core, your base action die is your dexterity with any armor penalties and modifiers. Personally, I like to get just a base number to start with, get it down so you know what you're looking at. So since our dex score was a 2, our base AD is going to be a 2. All right. Now this will change once we start adding disciplines and stuff, but that will affect the individual weapons themselves. All right. Your grapple score is half of your might plus your base AD minus 2. So this grappling is important. It's actually really deadly. That's actually the next character we're going to make is a kind of an advanced grappler. But for this guy, once again, our might score was a 2, so half of that is 1, plus the 2 base AD, which is minus the 2, so our base grapple score is going to be a 1 for now. All right. We get as of right now, we have no initiative bonus, so that's going to be a 0. And then our movement, because we're not one of the fancy races that have extra bonus or extra movement or anything like that, your base movement is a 5. All right. Which your armor and that kind of stuff will all affect that, but for right now, I like to get that down. That way you can kind of see a general overall picture of what you're looking at. All right. So now that we have got all of that down, now is when I come up to armor and weapons. Now, as we said, your numbers on your action dice are 1 through 4. So what that generally gives you is what is known as a soft cap of 4. All right. So as long as your action die is 4 or more, now this is just my opinion. If your action dice is 4 or more, go ahead and throw some armor on. If it's not, probably stay away from the armor because that's going to make it harder for you to hit things, unless you're making a tank. If you're making a tank, then you really don't need to hit things. You just need to be able to take hits. All right, but since we're going with our a basic sword and board guy, and we have a might score of 2, we see that we are, we have swords. We follow the chart down, and then we have rapier. All right, now all might 2. This is one of the nice things. You don't have to really worry too much about the kind of weapon. Now, different weapons do have different abilities, but for the most part, all might 2 weapons do the same damage, whether it's a sword, a hammer, an axe, a polearm, what have you. They all do 2d4 damage. All right. So for us, we're just going to go ahead and take the rapier. Actually, I completely messed that up, but we'll do that. We'll work with this for now. So we're going to go ahead and I'll make note down here on our sheet as rapier is our weapon. All right. Our AD for it right now is 2, and the damage is 2d4. All right. Now, when we look at the weapon class, all right, you'll see, here it is. The weapon class abilities. Every weapon class is a special ability. Axes do an extra point of damage. Hammers do 2 points of armor penetration, which, really only matters if the guy's wearing armor. Swords gain an extra AD on attack rolls. And polearms have reach. And the range is ranged. So because we have a rapier, we get which is a sword, we get +1 AD on it. So what I have done on our little character sheet here is made note of the fact that we have a rapier with 2 AD plus 1 from it being a sword. So our AD with our rapier is going to be 3. All right. Now, we're going to pop back over here to the board, or the PDF. All right. If you want a ranged weapon, probably generally a good idea to take one. At least because it gives you an option. Once again, it's based off of your might score. So with the might of 2, we get a recurve bow. So I'm going to mark that down as our secondary weapon, that we have a recurve bow. It's still going to have a 2 AD because of our base AD. And then it does 1d6 damage. All right. Range increments, that really only matters with once you actually get into combat. All right. So this shows you how to write it all down. All right. Next, we have armor. Now, so a 2 AD to attack with is average. At least as far as the rolled numbers go. Now, I have the 10-sided dice. You have basically 7 sides that will hit, 1 and 3 that will not, because you have the numbers 1 through 4, and then the 5 success squares. So the 5 successes will automatically hit, and anything you roll below your 2 or equal to, so a 1 or a 2, will hit. This is something that you're going to have to think about for yourself, if that's worth taking an armor, and reducing your, because every armor has an AD penalty. So sure, you could. Oh. All right. So for this guy, if I wanted to, I could comfortably see taking, because we have a +1 AD on the sword, I could see taking leather armor, because that's still going to give me at least half for my numbers, and then the 5 automatic successes. All right. The other thing that you can do, because you get to pick 3 weapons, so every character starts off with a dagger and 3 weapons. You can take a shield in place of a weapon if you want. In this instance, since we're doing a sword and board guy, I would actually, instead of taking armor, the leather armor for a 1 penalty is going to give you 1 armor. Unless you come down here to shield, for the same AD penalty of 1, you can actually get 2 armor for the shield, which, in my opinion, is a better deal. So I'm going to come down here and write on shield, I'm going to put round, and then a 2 to let me know that it has a 2. All right. And this is why I generally suggest using pencil on your character sheets as you build your character. That way you can make all of these adjustments. And so what you can do with this is on your character sheet where it says, second weapon or third weapon, you can put rapier with shield is going to be just a 2 AD and then no change to the damage. All right. So once we have done all of this, it's time to select your disciplines. And this is where you start spending your experience points. Now, as noted on our sheet, because we are human and we have a knowledge of 1, we have 35 XP. All right. Now, these are not the entirety of the choices for Pericle. But this is what we have in the Hero's Handbook right now. All right. So skip all of that. Down to, there we go, disciplines. All right, now, this is where things actually start to get a little difficult. So your experience points can be spent to upgrade one of your attributes, to gain a skill, or to learn a discipline. Now, your might and dexterity are an 8. Or it costs you 8 points to upgrade. Your knowledge costs you 3. And of course, different. All of the disciplines have, so your disciplines and your spells are split up already by a knowledge rating. So because we have a knowledge of 1 for our sword and board guy, we can go for 0, which is a bunch, and then knowledge level 1. All right. Now, like I said, for a lot of this, it's going to be stuff that, you might not necessarily want, but but this is where you're going to draw from your pool. Now, it's kind of up to you to determine what kind of character you want from this point. So we know we're doing basic sword and board. So for me, I know one of the first things I'm going to want to take is Mastery Sword. All right. Mastery Sword, it costs you 5 experience. And whenever you attack with your sword, you get plus an AD or plus a damage. It's up to you. You figure out what it's going to be before you make your attack. So I know that right now, my rapier is 2d4, and I've got a 3 AD without my shield or a 2 AD with my shield. Now, if I want to be really, really good with my sword, what I can do, there's a couple of different ways we can do this. We can take a couple different levels of Mastery Sword, which is going to give you the ability to either make it easier for you to hit or for you to do more damage. The other way to do this is to bump up your dexterity, which will give you a base AD of 3, and then adjust everything accordingly. All right? How you do it is up to you. Bear in mind, your dexterity score going up is also going to allow you to move first or move sooner in initiative, and makes all of your weapons easier to hit with. So with this guy, I would actually suggest starting off with bumping the dexterity up to 3. All right. So we're going to make that a 3, and that's going to take away. Actually, sorry. There's a skill that I have highlighted here on the screen that I forgot to talk about. If you're going to be playing with your might, your dexterity, or your knowledge, this skill right here is kind of a no-brainer. You spend 5 points, and it requires 1 less point to upgrade your might, your dexterity, or your knowledge. All right? It's one of those skills that you buy now that will pay dividends in later on. Because as we saw in the little playtest that we did the other day, combat gives you 1 XP unless it's a boss fight, which will give you 2. So spending the 5 on this now means that you're more likely to pick up skills sooner, in my opinion. So pretty much all of my people are going to take quick study, at least all characters that I create, because I foresee this being very useful. So I'm going to make note of quick study. -1 XP. Abilities. So that's going to knock us down to 30 XP. All right. Now I still want to bump the dex up by 1 point, but because we have quick study, it's only going to cost us 7 instead of 8. So that's going to put us at 23. All right. So we know we have Sword Mastery. Shield Bash is another good one. It allows you to make a second attack during your turn with your shield at -3 AD. All right. So this is a potential. Another good one for swords is honestly armor proficiency. Only if you plan on wearing a lot of armor proficiency is a good way to go. The first one doesn't give you a whole lot. It just lessens your movement, but it is required in order to get armor mastery 2 or armor proficiency 2, which actually reduces the AD penalty on your armor. So if that's a thing, it's 17 XP to get both, but it's a thing if you're planning on wearing a lot of armor that you might want to think about. Another good one you can take a bunch of sword masteries, and each level of it gives you a different place to put your whether it's your bonus AD or your bonus damage. If you plan on shield bashing a lot, you can do that. Another thing you can do is brutal attack. What it does is it allows you to take 1 away from your AD and add 1 to your damage. So if you've got somebody who's prone, or you've got a bunch of extra AD from your partner's casting spells or anything like that, that will allow you to swap out some of that excess AD for damage. Because like you said, anything more than 84, once all the numbers figure out, anything more than 84 is kind of wasted. This allows you to take 1 away from that and apply it to your damage, which damage is always good. This, like I said, this is a pretty basic guy. So Iron Flesh is another one. It gives you armor bonus without an AD, but it costs you 10 XP. So, these are all things that you need to think about. For us, we have 23 XP left. My suggestion would be to take a brutal attack 1, all right, to cost us 3. Do we get brutal attack 2? Nope, brutal attack 2 is not in the cards. You need a higher. You need a higher knowledge for that, that's something that we can get. But we have brutal attack 1, which gives us 20. All right. Now, one of the nice things about Pericle is that you can be whatever. You can have whatever ability you want. So if I wanted to cast spells as a sword guy, I can. You don't have to. There is no class. You just are who you are. All right. But for this basic guy, so we have a base AD of 3, which when we add our sword, that gives us a base AD of 4. Now, what we can do to kind of help stay at that 4 range, my suggestion, since we have 20 XP left, is to come up here for Mastery Sword, all right? And I would suggest taking at least 2 levels of that, all right? So Mastery Sword, and I'm going to put 2. So that's going to cost us 10, leaving us with 10 XP. All right. Now, what this does is that, as it is right now, we have an 84 with just our sword. If we have our sword and shield, we have an AD of 3. Sword Mastery, 2 points of Sword Mastery will allow me to have an extra AD, so bump it back up to 4, and then still have 1 left over to add damage. All right. This leaves us with 10 points left. And for this guy, in my opinion, I would suggest using the last 10 points to bump up your might and your knowledge. You bump up both of those for 9, leaving you with 1 XP left over. What this allows you to do is it will unlock the ability to do more. It'll unlock the KN2 rating of disciplines, which it's good to unlock some of this stuff because when you get into KN2, you start dealing with stuff like Berserk. You start dealing with like defensive fighting, swordsmanship. Basically, swordsmanship's really good. It's really expensive, but it's one that you'll definitely want if you're focusing on your sword, because as you can see here, all of the hit markers are treated as critical hits, which means that half of that dice is a critical hit. That's kind of a big deal. But that's the kind of stuff that you get in KN2. All right. Now, because we have bumped our might up to 3, we've kind of bumped everything up actually. This is where we get a chance to sit back and look at what we have now. So now with we're going to actually bring this back up to the weapons, because this is where we can actually start playing with some of this stuff a little bit more. And the reason I like to assign it before I start digging into the disciplines is because it at least shows me where I'm at now and where I can go with it. All right. So we're back up here to our melee weapons. And now that we have a might of 3, we can come down here and get either a short sword or a scimitar or something like that. And it gives us, because we're here, so we can get either a short sword, a scimitar, and we do different damage, right? So, instead of a rapier, we're going to say a short sword, because that seems to, in my head, that plays better with a shield. Our new AD, because of our new dexterity, our new base AD is 3, because of our dexterity. Which means that our AD with our short sword is technically a 4. And then when we're using our short sword and shield, that's going to give us a 3 there. All right, and then we have new damage, D6 plus D4. We can also take a different ranged weapon because our might is bigger, so that we can take a light crossbow. Now here's where things might get a little confusing. So all of your ranged weapons are going to take 2 hands. A recurve bow will let you fire every turn. This 2 right here on the longbow or on the light crossbow, what that tells you, you come down here and it attacks every other turn. Now, that's a decision that you'll have to make for yourself. Do you want to attack every turn for 1d6 or every other turn for 2d4? With a sword and shield guy, honestly, you're probably not going to be doing much ranged fighting. Best to leave it. We could probably actually bump it up to the light crossbow for the extra damage. Light expo. That's generally how I simplify that or abbreviate crossbow as expo for 2d4. All right. Let's see, we have 1 point left. All right, so now when we look at our skills, we have some decisions to make, because in character creation, like I said, you start off with a dagger, 3 weapons, or 2 weapons and a shield, and if you want, a piece of untailored armor. Untailored armor is basically basic armor, and then tailored armor. If you see here, like in this chart, you've got your leather armor here. Untailored, you have this -1 penalty. If it's tailored, it's generally 1 penalty less. All right. We don't get untailored armor, not to start with. But once you start messing with that later on, you can tailor it and then play with that. This is just for basic character creation. So for basic character creation, we know that right now, every time we swing our sword without the shield, we have a base AD of 4. We also have 2 points of sword mastery. So that's going to effectively mean that every sword swing can have up to 2 extra chances to hit. So because we're generally not going to rock just the sword, we're going to go sword and shield, we're going to have at least a base AD of 3. Now we can spend 1 point of that AD from our sword mastery to give us an AD of 4, which gives us 1 left over. Now, what we can do with that extra AD is we can put it into armor, to a leather armor, and get an extra point of armor, because that's going to cancel that out. You can bump it up to a heavier shield, or you can just kind of leave that floating so that you have that extra potential based on, like, if somebody does something to you and you lose some of your base AD because of a debuff or something like that. All right. So with this guy, very basic, very short-ish. You don't have to worry about exhaustion with this guy because there's no spells. None of your abilities, like all of your abilities, are basically making you either hit better or deal more damage. All right. So if we look at we come back here to our little sheet. We have a short sword by itself with a 4, doing d6 plus d4. We have our light crossbow, which is at a 3, not a 2. That should be a 3. Oops. This is why I say do everything in pencil. Which does 2d4, and then our short sword and shield has a base AD of 3 because it's the sword plus 1 and then -1 for the shield. All right, and that does the d6 and d4. And then, yeah, and because your might went up, because we raised might up by 1, your health actually goes up as well. So our max health is now a 13. All right, and then we would have to actually go to might 4 for our grapple to change. Wait, nope. We have to recalculate our might. So our grapple is half of our might rounded down. So half of 3 rounded down is 1, plus our base AD of 3, which gives us 4, minus 2, which gives us a new grapple score of 2. All right. And obviously, like I said, with a pencil, you'll be able to clean all this up. But that is how to do a basic character. All right. Now, I know people were asking about exhaustion and how exhaustion works. So exhaustion is when you're dealing with spells. So let's flip back over to the handbook here. All right, we're going to flip all the way down towards the bottom until we start dealing with spells. All right. All right, here we go. Spells. All right. In Pericle, spells are powered by your hit points. As of right now. That might change later on. But as of right now, spells are powered by your hit points. In a way. All right. So let's come down here. So all of the rest of this is important to learn at some point, but we're specifically talking about exhaustion. Because exhaustion is how you measure how many spells you have. So take our previous character, our sword and shield guy that had 13 XP. Theoretically, he has 13 exhaustion to spend to cast spells. Now, the reason why exhaustion is measured separately is because your exhaustion heals after every fight. You get into a fight, it's done. All right. Your damage does not. That's why it's measured a little bit differently. But it draws from the same pool. So that if I cast, for example, let's do something that's got a basic. All right. Nope. Not XE. All right. Yeah, sure. All these are one. All right, here we go. Trip. Very basic spell. You knock a guy over. It costs you 2 exhaustion or 4 if they have a might of 20. That's a lot. Probably not going to run into that very much. So 2 is going to be the thing that you deal with. So every time you trip somebody with the spell, it's going to cost you 2 exhaustion. So with our previous guy, he could technically trip somebody 6 times. That's going to put him at 12. That means he's got 1 hit point left. Now, if he gets, say you get attacked and you take 6 damage, all right? So what that does is that your initial 13 points, you take 6 away, you've got 7 left. 7? Yeah, 7 left. That means that if you cast 4 trips and then get hit for 6, that puts you at 14, and now you're unconscious. All right? This is the kind of the way that it's a little confusing, but it'll help hopefully it'll help in the long run. I know in the game kit, it comes with health trackers. So like you put, if we flip over to the character sheet here, so I can show you, on your character sheet, you've got like a little square here that you can put your current hit points. You've got a little square here that you put your exhaustion tokens. And what you'll do is if you've got your little squares, you put 13 of them in your current XP or your current HP. And then as you cast exhaustion spells, you move them over here. And then when you get injured, you take them off entirely. That way you keep track of which ones move over at the end of the fight and which ones you actually have to have healed. All right. The other thing to keep in mind with spells is that some of your spells have, like with our Summon Beast here, it has a 1E plus 1E per turn. So that 1E is the initial cost to cast. It's 1 exhaustion. And then every turn you pay an extra exhaustion for each instance of Summon Beast. So if you have 1 wolf, every turn you'll pay 1. If you have 2 wolves, every turn you'll pay 2. There are abilities that will help negate some of that. Some disciplines, like, where did it go? Spell proficiency, I believe is what it is. Yep, spell efficiency. Basically, you'll pay for it every odd turn. Stuff like that is going to be really good for summoners, especially. Combat with spellcasting is a little odd, unless you have cast on the run. I know we talked about that during this one right here. Generally, you can only move 1 square if you're going to cast a spell. With cast on the run, you can move your entire movement and then still cast a spell. It's the same thing with shot on the run, which is the ranged attack version of it. It's just little things to keep in mind. Honestly, for a lot of this, it's going to take you figuring out what kind of character you want and how you want to build them from there. Obviously, while you're mulling over your idea of what kind of character you want to make, read through the disciplines, read through the spells, make sure that you have an idea of what you're looking for. And honestly, if you have questions, I know I'm in the Pericle Discord all the time. I am more than willing to answer people's questions or even help people theory craft on what kind of characters they want to make. I've made probably half a dozen now. Some actually viable, some not. Playing around, I made a dual wield shield guy. He has no weapons, doesn't care about hitting things. He's just wears lots of armor and carries 2 shields. I don't even know if that's legal. Like, I haven't gotten an official ruling on that yet, since shield only takes 1 hand. Blah blah blah. Regardless, myself, there are other people in the Pericle Discord that are more than willing to help out. And honestly, if you've got a question, throw it in the comments. I'll get to all of the ones that I can. If I don't have an answer, I will find you an answer. But yeah, that's it for tonight, folks. I appreciate it. I appreciate y'all taking the time to watch this video. And you'll have to excuse the kind of jankiness of it. I wasn't initially planning on making a video, but there are a lot of comments about needing somebody to help kind of walk through how to do some of this stuff. So I will catch you all later, and you have a good night.